In this video, we're going to talk about Revlon's Long Wear Foundation. This is a 24-hour long-wearing foundation that also has hyaluronic acid in it, and it also has an SPF of 15. It's available in, I think, 43 shades, and it's extremely affordable, under $15 at Target. Is it a safe blind buy? Is it different from the one that they reformulated from, which is about a year ago? They changed this formula. Are the shades different? That's something that not many people have addressed here on YouTube, but if you used to wear shade 220, which is my shade, is it still the same shade? Because they look different when you look at them. Let's get into it. I'm Helen, I'm a writer, and I'm going on vacation soon, and look at all the stuff that I'm bringing with me back here. I swear Buzz Aldrin probably had fewer supplies to go to the moon. I write a newsletter called helenavery.substack.com. It's totally free. If you like beauty updates and humor essays, go ahead and sign up there, and you'll get something from me every week straight to your inbox. This is a bit tighter than my usual shop, but I really wanted you to see the foundation well. I've gone in with my Nude Stick Citrusy Mask and Daily Moisturizer, Yuzu and Turmeric. There's nothing special necessarily about this moisturizer, but I love that it has a beautiful citrus smell. And for me, it's just like, I don't get facials, so it's my way of treating myself to something that smells amazing. So that's underneath. Okay, let me show you my old bottle of Revlon ColorStay. This is before they reformulated with hyaluronic acid, because that's what it says now. No, scratch that. I thought that it said hyaluronic acid, and maybe it does elsewhere, but it doesn't. Helen, in editing here, I made a little bit of an oopsie because I said that the one that I have does not have hyaluronic acid, and I was confused. It does have hyaluronic acid, but I had purchased the incorrect one. So here's how it works. The new reformulated version for normal/dry skin has hyaluronic acid, and the new reformulated version for oily skin has vitamin E. So it does now have hyaluronic acid, just not the one I bought because I had accidentally bought the wrong one, which I'll tell you about in a second. And I'll actually say anything about being reformulated, but the bottles are slightly different since about a year ago when they updated. Now, straight off, before I start really getting into this, I want to talk about the color match situation, because I used to be 220 and I thought, am I still 220? Because when I went to look at this at the drugstore, it looked different. It just looked darker. But when I actually am putting it on, it does look pretty much the same. It's still my shade. So you guys know I talk about Estee Lauder Double Wear, and I like going in with fingers for that one. For this one, I prefer a brush. It's just a runnier formulation, and it just seems to cover more nicely when I use a brush as opposed to my fingers. It's funny how every foundation has a different sort of runniness and a different thickness. And I find with Estee Lauder Double Wear, it's nice if you can warm it up with your fingers. It helps to spread it a lot more, and you can use a lot less, and your bottle goes a lot further. It's less of a concern with this one because it's so runny, partly. It's because it's much more affordable. You know, it takes me a while. Each bottle lasts me about a year. So it takes me a while to go through it. And I don't use that many different foundations. It's just, with this one, I only use about one layer. Okay, sometimes I bop over the top with dampened beauty blender or beauty sponge, and sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends. I like to kind of go around the edges of my face, though. I mean, everybody does their own thing with this stuff. But the thing with me is my forehead here is a slightly different color. It's a slightly darker than the rest of my face, which is very normal. So I'm trying to actually lift a little bit of color here so my natural skin shows through a bit more. But for me, it covered the redness up really well. I don't know if you noticed that, how instantly, just like very quickly, within a minute, putting it here and brush dabbing it out really took down the redness in my skin. And I try not to use more than that because as I age, I find foundation doesn't look as good as it used to. I'm sure you're familiar. It tends to like cake and stuff like that. The less makeup, the better, I think, as you age, generally speaking. Just wanted to take you by the window to get more of a natural light kind of view. I have not noticed a difference between the reformulated version and the older version, and I was a long-time user of the older version. I find them to be pretty much the same. I haven't really noticed any difference. I know they supposedly added hyaluronic acid into one and vitamin E into the other type, but it seems the same to me. The longevity, the look of it. So no complaints on the reformulation, because that's always tricky, right? When they reformulate foundations, a lot of us are like, ugh, why? But it seems to be exactly the same. I guess maybe they just wanted to freshen up the packaging and add, I guess with the hyaluronic acid, that's a really popular ingredient right now. I think that was probably the thinking behind it. Functionally, though, they seem the same to me. I also made a boo-boo when I was repurchasing the long wear makeup in shade 220. If you look here, I used to buy the normal/dry skin version because I have kind of normal dry skin. I accidentally bought the one that's for combination oily skin. So theoretically, this one is more matte and more oil absorbing. And yeah, I will actually repurchase the normal slash dry skin one. But I thought, you know what, I already own this. I'm just going to try and make it work. And it has been working, especially if you use a lot of moisturizer that's quite dewy underneath. One interesting thing, though, to note about the old one versus the new one is, look at this. You can really see how much I've used in this bottle, right? The glass, you can't, like, I don't know how they do this to the inside of the glass, but the level, you can really see it well. Whereas I could never see the level of this one. I don't know why. The glass is not tinted because you can see here there's some streaks through, but somehow the foundation is clinging in a different way to the inside of this glass. So I could never tell really how much I had left. Whereas this is instantly visible. So maybe that's something new that they've done to the bottles. I've never even heard of that. And also here, let's have a look at Estee Lauder Double Wear. This also has one of those bottles where you have no idea. This is empty, but you have no idea that there's nothing left in it. So I'm going to come up nice and close. Let me get some background light going and you can have a look. It's quite nice. Even though this one is formulated for dry skin, it didn't completely dampen down all glow underneath. So you can make it work if you have skin on the drier side. I don't think there's a huge difference between the one for dry skin and the one for oily skin. I would say the one that is for dry skin is a little more mattifying. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's talk about the situation with Revlon for just a hot second. I promise this sort of history moment's not going to last too long, but you know, they almost went bankrupt a couple years ago. They filed for bankruptcy protection, which is, for me, sad because this is an iconic drugstore brand. It's been around since the 1930s. So well known, especially for Revlon lipsticks, which are still amazing, by the way. Like if you need a red, I always say don't overspend on a red lipstick. Nobody does them better than Revlon, in my opinion. This amazing foundation, which I will be very sad if it gets discontinued, if there are more problems with business. But anyway, it emerged from bankruptcy protection because it got purchased and the old cast and crew, the CEO, etc., are all out. And so now it's got different owners. Hopefully it will continue to succeed. I tried to understand how it was that Revlon, which is such a huge, iconic drugstore brand, could be doing so poorly. I mean, apparently the lipstick alone sells one every 9 minutes. How is it that they were on the brink of bankruptcy? Well, as it turns out, they purchased Elizabeth Arden, you know, that makeup brand, which, I mean, who even uses that anymore? But they spent a lot of money acquiring that, and then they had a lot of debt, and I guess it just snowballed from there. I don't pretend to understand the decisions these CEO types make, but that is my understanding of why they almost went bankrupt, along with other factors, of course, including a lot of supply chain problems in the pandemic. But I mean, didn't everybody have supply chain problems? Didn't CoverGirl have supply chain issues during the pandemic as well? Unclear. But who cares? If you're a beauty lover, the thing that matters right now is you can still get your hands on Revlon. The interesting thing about Revlon ColorStay makeup is that it comes in 43 shades. So I'll put a little graphic up of those shades. So it's got a pretty good shade selection. Contrast that with Estee Lauder, which has, I think, 55 shades. It's pretty good. Now, it also has an SPF of 15, which it says on its front of it. Contrast to Estee Lauder Double Wear, which I believe this foundation is a dupe for. That's why I keep mentioning the two of these sort of in the same breath. This one doesn't have any SPF number on the front. And I think in North America, it's not sold with the SPF factor readily visible. But I did some digging and I found out that Estee Lauder's Double Wear has an SPF of 15. Now, you guys know it's not really enough. You should be wearing a full SPF underneath, especially in those sunny months. But on the other hand, it's not nothing, so I guess that's good. They use pretty good ingredients. It's just like titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. I mean, depending on how you feel about those ingredients, I'm fine with that. And they're actually listed on the label of the foundation. And I just noticed here that I've totally missed the side of my nose. So I'm just going to go back in with the foundation brush and see if I can work that back in. So what about the claim on it that it lasts for 24 hours? And I'm a little alarmed that every makeup manufacturer seems to be upping the claim to longer because they know we're never going to test it. Are you really going to wear foundation on your face for 24 hours straight? Unless you're like have some sort of crazy overnight shift in an emergency room as a doctor or nurse, I'm not really sure why you would have to wear something for 24 hours. You'd want to be washing it off. So I think that they know that they're not really testing this claim too well. But just in my own experience, I've done a little bit of a double wear test. I can't remember how many hours they say this one lasts, but I just had put it on my arm here and it lasted. It did stay overnight. It didn't rub off or anything like that. So these long wears do cling. They function by sort of staining your skin almost. That's how I've noticed it to work. Okay, so I'm going with a really light makeup day today. I don't even think I'm going to be putting on any eye makeup. And because I'm not putting on any eye makeup, I like to dab on a little bit of this is a very old Korres twist lipstick that I have, and I do keep my lipsticks for a long time. So sue me. It's called Grace. They don't make it anymore, which is a shame because I think it's kind of a nice, it's like a nice soft brown. It kind of gives me 90s vibes a little bit. So let's talk about whether this is a safe blind buy or not. I strongly believe that you can purchase Revlon ColorStay Long Wear Foundation as a blind buy. What does the word blind buy mean? Blind buy means when you just purchase it without having tested it first. I don't recommend that with Estee Lauder's Double Wear because this foundation oxidizes quite a bit and the color that it dries down to is slightly different than what's in the bottle. I've got some other videos about that. So it's got an oxidization issue. And when you're spending $50 more on a foundation, you want to make sure you're purchasing for your oxidized color, not the color that comes straight out of the bottle. But with this one, the Revlon, I do feel, first of all, it's only $13 at Target. And not that you should be throwing your money around, but that's really not the end of the world. If it doesn't quite work for you, usually you can make it work. Add a little moisturizer, add another foundation to it together if you really want to make it work. For that amount of money, you don't feel like it's the end of the world. Whereas if you purchase this and you're not a big one for sending in returns, you're going to regret it, right? You're going to regret overspending on something as a blind buy. But I feel like for this one, it's good. I would love to say that it has a lot of cons. I don't have any. Like, this is my favorite foundation. Far and away, I've tried Danessa Myricks. I'm not even sure if I'm saying her name right. I've tried the NARS foundation. Obviously, Estee Lauder Double Wear. None of them have really stood the test of time for me like this one. I keep repurchasing it, and not just because I'm thrifty, just because it works so well and it looks so nice. So yes, for me, I think it's a safe blind buy. Use the website findation.com, not foundation.com, Findation, FINDATION.com, and have a look for your colors there, and they might give you one or two choices. It's pretty good for that website. You'll probably get pretty close. And of course, you can just like visually look at it, or you can just read the descriptions of the different colors and you probably land on the right one. And if you don't, it's not the end of the world. The other interesting thing is with this particular color, the way that it looks in the bottle is sort of the oxidized color. Does that make sense? So you're going to see it here, you're going to pump it, and it's going to look a little different when you pump it. When it dries, it'll look more like this. I don't know what kind of magic that is or how that even happens. Probably has to do with the sort of drying and wet process and also how you're seeing things and perceiving things with your eyes. But it's still really enjoyable, comfortable to wear. It doesn't settle in too heavily if you have mature skin, which I appreciate, unlike many of the other foundations. And if you want to bump up this highlight level, obviously just wear a little bit of highlighter. This is where, I've ragged on e.l.f. Halo Glow and said that is not a very good product. It's fine as a liquid highlighter, just here or here, anywhere else you want to highlight. I just find that the claims are too much. I made a video about that. I'll link it up at the end. You can see what my 6-month review on e.l.f. Halo Glow is and what it's also a dupe for, which you probably already know. This is a really good dupe for Estee Lauder's Double Wear. If you don't have a lot of money, maybe you just want a little bit of a matte foundation in your foundation wardrobe and you just don't want to spend a stack of money, get this one. I think that you're going to like it. I don't feel bad recommending this because of the low price and because I've used this for years. Everything that I do here, when I make these longer reviews, I'm really trying now to concentrate on things that I've been loving for a very long time. I'm really not about the game anymore where you're just constantly going through different products, and everybody loves that novelty, but I just don't think it's a good strategy for me, for the planet, for any of that. But of course, I still love watching those videos too. That's the honest truth. I love watching people do a haul try on kind of video. I just don't want to necessarily be involved in that game myself. You can layer it up. I go with one layer because I just want a little bit of skin effect showing through. I mean, you can still see my 11s and things like that right through the foundation. And I'm fine with that. You notice that I didn't drop any on my forehead. It's the winter and I'm drier than usual. So that's my strategy. In the winter, I don't put any foundation on my forehead. In the summer, I will because I'm shinier. But because I'm drier in general, I just use whatever's left on the brush. And I just put my 2 big globs here and then I kind of try and work it around my face more. Whereas in the summer, I can get away with a bit more layering if I want. I just find it looks very deadening in the winter. So try not to do that. I live in a very cold climate. I live in Toronto, Canada, and it has been gray and snowy for months now. So that's where we're at with that. All right, if you enjoyed this little review, drop a like, consider subscribing. These 2 things help me figure out what kind of videos you like to watch and if I should make more of them and if people are interested. I'm going to put up another video now, that Halo Glow one, because if you're a makeup lover, you're just going to want to see how this looks on me. It's kind of interesting. So I'm going to play that next. Go ahead and click on that. Thanks so much for spending your time here with me, and we'll see you on the next video.